talking to us about the RAND MOAs later on in our broadcast, but we'd like to welcome you to our Sunday podcast, and we'd like to thank everybody that's out there because we're almost 60,000 subscribers now. So thank you so much for helping us out. This is amazing for us. Right, Fred?
Yes, we're growing nicely.
Yeah. So if there's something you'd like us to add to our channel, please feel free to email, chat, or post something on the community area. We'll review it, and if it's doable, we'll put it in our show. This week there was some pretty good banter around what I posted as far as the NTSB report on the Reagan incident, and let's keep that lively and professional. There was somebody made some silly remark on there, and that'll be the last time I even approach answering something like that. I will from now on in just remove the comment. It's not necessary. Okay. We had posted a new show, Plan, Determine, Self-Termination, and does anybody out there have any questions on that? We would love to hear it. You should be able to open up the chat room and chat with us, if so. Oh, I see low volume in Buffalo, Texas. Well, is that any better now, Jack? I can see that I'm pegging the needles over there. Huh. I'll try to talk louder. Is that that's probably about the best I can do. Can you bring the volume up on our end? Anybody else have any questions about the last show that we put out there? Oh, that's much, okay, very good. You can hear us much better. I appreciate that, Jack.
Hey, Robert?
Yeah,
Okay, I have you live.
great. Jack just told me that too. That's great.
Yeah, the little symbol, I didn't hit, there was a live word, with a list of things.
Uh-huh.
And now what I did was your little symbol, I had a little live button. Well, I hit on that and you came right up, I think.
Great, great. I'm just trying to navigate these panels that I have on the big screen behind me so that we could see you guys and also talk extemporaneously about what we have coming up. So we have, we want to let you know we have T-shirts for our show. So if you're out there and you want to help support our channel, our podcast, you could purchase our T-shirts. We have a booklet out there that talks about the history of air traffic control. So we have that. We have hats and cups that will be coming. So we would love for you to help support the channel with your purchases because we are not monetized right now. We are pulling everything out of our pocket. Isn't that right, Fred?
That is. Bob is modeling one of those T-shirts right now, so you can see how good it looks on somebody. The colors are a very nice blended pop. The cups will have that logo on it also. So we're kind of proud of the design that came up. It was produced by my wife Peggy, and she's coming up with lots of other things. It would look a lot better on her than Bob anytime.
I got to agree with you, Fred.
Yes.
At least this time.
Now we want to go to FAA news.
Yeah, let's move along to some of the news in the FAA. I don't know if anybody was watching this week that Tuesday, Sam Graves, the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, he said that they're going to allocate $15 billion for the modernization of the air traffic control technology. Can you imagine $15 billion getting infused into the system? Well, being around as long as I've been, I've seen this kind of a bill come in before like that, and I can tell you that unless that bill comes in with the $15 billion along with sustaining funds for any equipment that's purchased, that's one. Number two, they don't buy the lowest bidder. They don't purchase from the lowest bidder. They need to have some experts to go around and find out who has got the similar systems and then purchase the one that is actually going to benefit the air traffic control system, not based on price, but based on safety, intuitive technology, and additional modernization. And then along with that, they need to make sure that they give us cadre instructors to help with that instead of having to supply cadre out of the ranks of our employees to train. Now, of course, the initial training can take place through the area, but we don't want to reduce any of the ranks of the controllers that are working to teach the training on these particularly new products. What do you think, Fred?
Yeah, I'd like to pass a little hint on to the administrator. My headset's available, and I did spend a lot of time at the academy when the strike first came down. It was a wonderful experience, and it is a great tool to indoctrinate the new people to air traffic and what they can expect. Now to talk about tomorrow at 4 p.m. Houston time, the administrator, Sean Duffy, is going to be talking about a new innovation in the air traffic system and the training program. So I look forward to hearing about that and what they have planned.
Really?
I think one of the things we need in all these systems and training are people that have been controllers and not just managers someplace. You need to have someone that has the hands-on time that can.
Talk louder, Jack. Up front.
You need to have the hands-on time that can experience what these trainees are going to go through and what they can expect.
Yeah, watch from over there because you'll be distracted by the other one.
Okay. Right now, we have a group of people to discuss the areas south of San Antonio, Randolph Air Force Base, and we have military areas in that airspace where various military aircraft will go down and do mission work to get trained.
Yeah, to train on the T-38s and fly around. So I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Mark Schroer. He's a T-38 pilot and a former Randolph MOA instructor. We have, I believe, Chris Heston is on. I don't see Dave Broughton. Did you make it, Dave? I guess not. So if you put up the picture of the Rand MOAs, that'll be good. So behind me, you'll see the operating airspace of the Rand MOAs. And what I'd like to do is maybe have Chris and or Mark weigh in on how this airspace is set up and what the defining moments for you when you were working traffic or flying through there were. I guess not. So you put up the picture of the Rand MOAs.
You want me to start?
Either Mark or Chris, whichever.
All right, I'll go ahead and go. My name's Chris Heston, and I worked that area for quite a long time. I'll just address the 1A for right now, because we have a T-38 pilot here, and so looking at the area, it's the one in blue. That big area was cut up into 5 smaller areas. So they had ran 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The 1, 2, and 3 were on the northern edge, and 4 and 5 were in the southeast corner. Additionally, we had the ability, because 3 was probably the largest one that they had. We could when the demand was there. We could split off 3 into 3 Alpha and 3 Bravo. So you could technically have 6 different areas working at the same time. These when the altitude that the aircraft used was from 8 or 9,000 to 22. I'm recollecting anyway. And so, and I've been on two different FAMs out there to rent it for. I got to go on a flight. The latest one was in 2001. What they would, my experience and what they do a lot was that they would depart Randolph, go low level, and go over to Seguin, which is really close to only a few miles from Randolph to Seguin. They would go and do a touch and go or two, no telling how many, and then they would launch off east. This is all under VFR conditions, so that we're not providing separation for
Where
them
do I
yet.
do that at? You see?
But they would they take off in Palisade, airborne Seguin. Now we had a set of codes for them that was set aside. So it was all 5500 series. So if they were coming off as Cheetah 01 or Cheetah
Thank you.
24, it would be 5524 or 5521. So it's pretty easy to identify them. And they would call up. We'd identify them. Typically they wanted one because it was closer. So you know we would clear them on an east departure. They would go east and then enter that MOA, and then that'd be the last we'd really hear of them until they would call for recovery, which meant they wanted to go back home. So we would either recover them. There was a high TACAN fix out there. I think it was called Randy. It started at 23,000, and it was just on the very western corner of Ran 4. And so there's a high TACAN approach that started from 23. And then they would go down there and cross the fix. I think it was called Talon that they would process. So they would go from 23 down to 8,000, and that's maybe 15 miles. So they're coming down pretty good.
That's good, Chris. Thanks. Hey, Mark.
Yes.
Again, thanks for coming on the show. What happened when you went in there and the center terminated the radar and you guys went into play?
Well, y'all still kind of kept a monitoring on us. I was just thinking in the earlier days, the first time I went through as a trainee, you know, we would do TACAN or VOR radios and DME to maintain the differences that Chris was talking about in the different MOAs. And there were times where somebody that was monitoring would tell us to work either west or south or north. Guys tended to press the boundaries a little bit just because of the, how do I want to say, the accuracy of the radial DME, the VORs at the time. You know, depending upon how far out, they weren't pinpoint accurate. In the early 2000s, we transitioned from what they called the T38A to the T38C. The navigation platform changed to a GPS, INS type of navigation. And it was pinpoint accurate. And what we could also do is on our multifunctional displays now that we had in the T38, you'd have to be, how do I want to say, politically correct, maybe not the smartest or not the sharpest tack in the world if you ever departed the MOA, okay? It was very simple with that navigation system, and then being able to see the boundaries of each of the RAN MOAs. So, but we would go out there, depending upon what part of the program you were in. We called the first part contact. That's where we would teach the individuals coming into the airplane. They would be the potential instructors would be sitting in the front seat. They would do their proficiency phase of the program, and then they would transition to the back and start their instructional phase. So when they first got there, we would do a lot of the contact. We'd go out into the MOA, do stalls, do some acro, just to get their hands good on the airplane. And then primarily, I know Chris had talked about these departures, but we would also recovery. Besides Randy, we would come back and drop out of the bottom of the MOA and go to Seguin. And just east of the town of Seguin is the military satellite field that we used. It was only used by the T-38s we had priority. The T6s might have come in there, but it wasn't what the 38s. T6s would go back to Randolph and go to the pattern there. So later on in the program, we would transition them into formation, and that's where we'd probably take a couple of those MOAs and combine them 3A, 3B, because we needed bigger areas to maneuver with. And then once again, formation, you probably stayed out. Our average sortie length was probably a 1.1. So we would spend most of our time out in the MOA doing the formation work and then recover directly back to Randolph. You could go in to Seguin visually and do a formation, but we could only do this at Randolph, and we used to do formation touch and goes, believe it or not, up until a point where one of our 2-star generals went through one and said he didn't like it no more, so but we've done it for years. But primarily we would recover back to Randolph for one approach to a full stop.
I thought you guys were going down there to Seguin for a hamburger.
Yeah. Yeah. The only time that I know of anybody that actually stopped there was if no kidding, had an emergency, we need to get their craft on the ground. I know a couple of times that we had guys go in there and full stop. But primarily, we would recover to Randolph. And then the other phases were basically an instrument phase and then a low-level phase. But primarily, you were doing either a contact mission or a formation mission. So, but each one of those phases had a proficiency phase where the trainee would be in the front seat. Once they graduated or advanced out of the proficiency phase, they got to go sit in the back of the T-38 and learn how to teach from the back seat, but also fly the airplane from the back seat. The references were different. Fortunately, we could teach off the canopies in front of us. We would get our sight picture, but have to talk about what sight picture that the trainee had in the front seat. Vice versa, when the instructor sat in the front seat, the trainee would have to talk to us about what he's looking at or how he's instructing a student. What helped too was we're kind of the same breed, and instructors have seen the same thing over the years. So we even have a booklet depending upon what phase that you were teaching at, and we would know what we had common student errors. And so they've been seen before.
So that was a very thick book, right?
It potentially could be, but a lot of the things that you learn, not only with those basics with the common student errors, but what you would see students, believe it or not, had new ways of figuring out to do something different.
Mark, what was the length of the runway at Seguin?
It was 8,000 feet. Right. That was our minimum runway in a T-38.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Did the T-38 have drag chutes?
No, not at all. And then they had wheel brakes, but our primary way of slowing the aircraft down was once we landed, we stayed in the landing attitude and then would bring the nose up even higher to have what we called an aero brake. Yeah. And then as we started slowing down, we'd bring the nose back to the runway. So our touchdown speed in the T-38, our approach speed, let's say, is 155 knots, but by the time you touch down, about 145, and by the time you got to about close to 100 knots, you'd bring the nose back down, and now you would use the wheel brakes to brake for the remainder of the runway. Well,
it's very awesome. You know, I remember the T-38 had a 20,000 foot a minute climb rate. Is that correct?
20,000 foot a minute, maybe doing a loop.
Oh.
But yeah,
well, that was what it was used to be published at, if I remember right.
I'm sorry?
That was what it was published at, if I remember right. For aircraft characteristics, that's what I would go by when I would control you guys and ask you for the expedite.
if I remembered right though, if we were climbing at some of the rates that we climbed, you would lose the altitude readout on us, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it wouldn't take much.
Right, right. Now, what we would, let's say a very simple maneuver like a loop, we get the nose coming down, and by the time that we start our pull, we were already at 500 knots. And then it would take 10,000 feet to do the complete loop. And so you're pulling a good 5 Gs, just getting the nose up. And then you're over on your back, we're about 175 knots, but now you're coming down the backside. And once again, you're pulling down, and as your speed increases, you got to keep that pull going, and we'd be 5 Gs on the bottom side. So it would take 10,000 feet to do an actual loop in the T-38.
That's amazing. So could you give us any of your experiences with ATC as far as quote unquote fun times? Can you switch that camera to the main?
What kind of times? I'm sorry?
Oh, any kind of interesting interactions between you and ATC. Oh, and by the way, Jack Overfield says hi. He's on, and he says hello to you and Chris.
Okay.
Can you see the chat there? Because we are talking in chat. You should be able to.
Yeah. Okay.
reply.
I can see the chat. Yes,
Okay, good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's open to everybody.
Yeah. I would say the only. Trying to think of any experiences with you guys.
Well, you could tell it like I had a friend that did this, if it helps.
Yeah. I tell you what, I've always had a very professional interaction between myself and the controllers. I mean, I never ran into any situation or anything that warranted to discuss something or whatever between me and the controller. I mean, it was the procedures, we did it. Getting out there, coming back. I would say one time, it was over at the MOAs on the west side of San Antonio. Myself and another instructor were over there, and we called to recover, and we couldn't hear. The radio was kind of blurred, and it's like, something's not right here. And I finally figured out that we had a stuck mic. And so rather than us transmitting everywhere and maybe interfering with radio calls, what we ended up doing was just turning the radio off. And before we did that, I transmitted, because I knew we had a stuck mic, I just transmitted over Houston Center's frequency that, hey, we think we have a stuck mic. We're going to start our recovery at this time, and just treat us like we are over here on the west side of the red area. But I just transmitted that we believe we have a stuck mic and that we're going to recover back to Randolph. Once we get below the MOA, we're going to just proceed VFR. And that's basically what we did. Switched over eventually to San Antonio approach and transmitted in the blind there. And then when we recovered back at Randolph, the tower's waiting for us with the light signals. So they knew we were coming. But
so you've actually been a recipient of a light gun, huh?
Yes, I have. Yes. So I think transmitting in the blind, because like I said, couldn't figure out what was going on with the radios, and then it's like, hey, we're the ones that are the problem, and at least they could hear us, and we gave the controllers our intention. So it worked out just perfectly.
Well, great. That's absolutely amazing. Hey, Chris, if you're still on, do you have any feedback on any special or interesting things that you had with T-38 pilots out of that RAN MOA, or just out of San Antonio in general, or Randolph?
No, I have to. I can't think of one single time when there was any kind of like discord or whatever you want to call them. The only thing even approaching that, it wouldn't have been a pilot, is there was a time or two where they had it over scheduled, where they had too many, and it only took a couple times, and you know, when you have too many, we had to send the one that was in there longest home sooner than he wanted to. And we didn't really like doing that, but you know, sort of what are you going to do? But it was a case of overscheduling. I mean, we knew that the pilots over there generally, my knowledge of it anyway is they're all instructor pilots with the student, and so they had been through the. You didn't have anybody just brand spanking new out of the can, you know, going off those areas. You had really experienced pilots, they're professional. You know, I really can't.
Well, I got to agree with you. Anytime I had an experience with the T-38 pilots, they were always on the up and up, very, very professional. I'd like to put up another slide there, special use airspace.
The T-37s were the newbies.
Yes.
And the first trainees, and they would transition.
Well, what's coming up right now is a special use airspace around the San Antonio area. So you can see how cut up that is and how much information you have to have when you're flying. Just imagine flying VFR around there, what it's like, trying to contact all these control places. So what feedback do you have on any of this airspace? What do you think about the way it's been designed and the way it's been cut up and how ATC handles all the ins and outs of that?
Who's that question?
Either one that wants to tackle it.
Well, this is Mark. As far as what I would say is, I think the airspace was made or constructed, or the way it is, it was very efficient. You know, there were so many different missions going out there. Not only did we have the MOAs, but we had departures going out to low-level routes that would take us up around Lake Buchanan, you know, west of Austin, to do a low level. There was one that took us south. I mean, it just with all the different military aircraft. And then, you know, I was going to say with that Western MOA, before we ended up having what they call the fighter lead-in program come to Randolph and teach. Once again, that's where they would teach their instructors to go out to the other bases. We used to use primarily the Western MOA for a lot of formations, and then leave because somebody was talking about too many airplanes. We would send all the formations out west and leave the single or the individual airplanes in the RAN MOA, and it was close to Seguin, so that made it efficient where they could get the area work done, get into Seguin for pattern work, and go back to Randolph. Where the formations, we could go ahead and send out to the West MOA, and they could get their work done. Doesn't mean that we kept all the formations west, but they did east also. But primarily, we did that. Now, when that program came to Randolph, that was primarily the area they used. And so, yeah, at times we may have been overscheduled, or, you know, after the first Gulf War ended, at least in the Air Force, there were a lot of squadrons that got shut down due to money. They weren't being funded like they were back in the 80s, 70s and 80s, where there was an awful lot of traffic, an awful lot of training going on. So, you know, we even took some of our graduating pilots. They couldn't bring them into other airplanes because some of the squadrons had been shut down. So they became what they call banked pilots, and they had ground duties. And then a couple years later, we got them back into the airplanes, and they went and flew. It was just a cutback, and we had an overabundance of pilots. But the Air Force didn't want to just riff people because they knew a couple years down the road they're going to need everybody.
I see. So go back to the main screen. So I have a question here from Jack. I don't know if you've seen it. He's interested to know if you've ever had formation riders get ill on their formation.
Well, Jack would be the one to be able to answer that one.
You could drop that picture.
Yeah. No, Jack came out for a incentive ride, and I was fortunate enough to be his pilot. and we were paired up with another instructor and also somebody else that was getting, I think it was a cadet from the Air Force Academy. Must have been in the summertime, and so we went out to the East MOA there and did some formation work, and then we got into some of the more what would you say, higher G maneuvering.
Yeah.
And we were doing a couple things, and Jack, not being used to the G's and maybe some of the maneuvers, he said, he just asked, "Hey Mark, I think we need to back off a little bit. I'm not feeling well," which we did, and then we came back to Randolph, did some pattern work and things like that. But yeah, that's funny he asked that question because that was him.
Yeah. Well, we've got a show on I believe it's season 1. I'm not sure that is a direct association with that story. And Jack, he put it together, and he talked about all of his escapades flying in that T-38. He edited it down so that it would fit on the channel for us. But I'm going to go ahead and post a copy of the link in our conversation area. So just in case anybody out there wants to take that for a spin also.
And
Basically what that was with the new C model, we had HUDs put in the airplanes, and we would have bring out a data cartridge and stick in the instrument panel, and it would record not only our instruction or feedback back and forth, but you could also put that in a reader, and it would actually show the airplane doing its maneuver. So we could get actually 4 airplanes in a formation. Each of them inputted their card reader, and you could see rejoins, and we could do it that way, instruct on, let's say, rejoins or maneuvers that we were doing out in the MOA. So we had the data cartridge, and so everything that was said between Jack and I, and it was looking through the HUD, and that's what he got his. Well, that's what you have there. He believe we got a DVD off of that, and that's what he inputted into the NGL system there. So.
Well, I could see a remark from Shelley Alley. He says the only problem we had while he was out there were Navy pilots drifting into the Ram MOAs and getting too close to the T-38s. The Navy pilots never saw a problem with it, though. If you can imagine.
Their MOA is just to the south of ours, I believe, coming out of Kingsville. Well, we had the MOA down
Kingsville
there.
and Chase that would come around those areas.
Yes. Yeah, Chase, and then that's closed. That was closed now.
Yeah.
We would head down there too sometimes for instrument work. Orange Grove, that was sort of their aux field for practicing their carrier landings, on hard pavement. But we would just primarily go down there because that was the only place in South Texas we could find a PAR, of course. So
Mark, the transition from the T-38 to the new aircraft was the T-1, right?
Well, the T-1 was let me explain. Everybody went through T-37s, and then T-6. The T-6 replaced the T-37. So everybody would go through the primary training, either T-37 or T-6, and then at that point, they would split. And if you're going to go fly fighters, you would fly the T-38. If you went and flew a crew aircraft, you'd fly the T-1. And so not everybody flew a T-1, not everybody flew a T-38.
I think the picture's stalled. Okay, well that's good to know. Are we still going live? You guys still see a live picture? Okay.
With what we have, I mean, your setup there, Robert. Me talking on. Sorry, drawing a blank.
On Zoom?
You're on Zoom, yes, and then your podcast on YouTube is delayed by like 10 seconds.
Yes, it is, and I realize that.
Yeah.
The software for the tricorder that I'm sending out on does not allow me to enter but only one sound input. So that's why I had to split it between Zoom and YouTube. but there is a software modification coming that I'll be able to use multiple audio. And the next time, if it's not upgraded, I'll just run it through one of my receivers
Yeah.
that can take multiple inputs and run out one wire. But this has all been wonderful. I really appreciate you coming on, Mark and Chris. You guys were awesome. Mark, we're going to send you a T-shirt for Behind the Scope that you can wear proudly because you were on the show, and you can point to your friends and say, yeah, you can see this segment because it's being recorded. And for you, Chris, I know you already got a shirt from the last time we were together. But thank you all for joining us, and we really appreciate your time. So tell your friends about the channel, like, share, and subscribe. We would really like to get more people involved, and we'd also like their feedback, and we'd also like to know if there's anything you'd like us to talk about on the channel. Anything that has to do with aviation or certainly air traffic control, because that's where we're at. But we don't want to speculate. We want to keep all of our conversations on the up and up, okay? We don't need any puny people coming on and not giving us appropriate remarks, if everybody can understand that. So what do you, anything else from you, Fred?
I'm sure we'll have some new information next week on the direction the FAA wants to go in with the training updates from the administrator, and I look forward to see what that might lead to.
All right.
Everybody have a good week.
And we want to thank our switcher over here, Mr. Malcolm Chan. He came out today to help us with our podcast, and we absolutely needed him. So thank you to you, sir. Appreciate it. So from Fred and I here at in Spring, Texas, we'd like to say thank you, and join us next week, and keep liking, subscribing, and sharing, and don't forget the thumbs up, okay? Thank you all very much. We're going to end that show.
Well,